and CNN media analyst Bill Carter. Gentlemen, great to have you here. This is,
Morning.
It's happening, okay? So fake news and crazy conspiracy theories now see the real-time, real-life consequences. People become incensed by them, they become upset, and they show up with a gun at a pizzeria. I'll just read to you very quickly what the owner of the pizzeria said. What happened today demonstrates that promoting false and reckless conspiracy theories comes with consequences. I hope that those involved in fanning these flames will take a moment to contemplate what happened here today and stop promoting these falsehoods right away. Brian, what are we to do about the ubiquity of false news?
This is a fake story, but it ended up with a real gunshot. Thankfully this person discharged the weapon at the ground, apparently, not at anyone in particular. Thankfully no one was injured in this case. It's an isolated incident, and I think we all feel in the back of our heads or in our guts that this is going to keep happening. Things like this are going to keep happening as we deal with this plague of fake news. It's a supply and demand problem. Some people want to believe these malicious falsehoods online. And I would also point out not all conspiracy theories are created equally. This was a particularly
really
pernicious conspiracy theory, over the top.
Right.
Impossible to believe, and yet people do subscribe to it.
Well, first of all, you have to look at the actor, right? I mean, every case you look at specifically, he's either mentally ill or really stupid. Either way, that's not somebody you're going to reach just with simple fact and truth.
Right.
So then you get to just on the macro. What do we do about this? My first instinct is to not call it fake news.
Right.
I do not believe that you give a label that legitimizes BS.
We've gone too far with the news in there. These things are preposterous fabrications.
There's nothing to do with this has always happened.
Yes, people
it's
make
just easier now.
Series about everything. We've been talking about this for generations.
Right.
But these are being taken, and they're not being repudiated by the right people.
Not only are they not being repudiated, they're being picked up and believed and proliferated
Exactly.
by our leaders. You say consider the source. Look at General Michael Flynn, okay?
Precisely.
Look at
Well, he says he got duped.
He got duped, but his son
are our leaders being duped and being that gullible?
Right, Flynn tweeted a version, a slightly different version of fake news slightly before the election.
Yes.
Then last night his son was on Twitter very much promoting this particular crazy conspiracy.
Here it is. I'll just read his son's. This was last night. Until Pizzagate is proven to be false, it'll remain a story. The left seems to forget Podesta emails and the many, quote, coincidences tied to it. So I guess he feels until we prove every day that Martians aren't landing, Martians are landing.
I think you got it right.
Well,
and that's a very scary place to be. This
is
about leadership.
This is a false flag thing, that this guy wasn't actually believing this. There's some suggestion that this is a way to devalue it by having this guy do this. You can't get anybody to believe this if they've bought in. They're just totally in.
So you have the gutter level of it, and then you have the highest echelon of what this really is about, which is, do facts still matter? And of course the answer has to be yes. But when you have Mike Pence with our friend George, and he says, look, the president-elect is entitled to his opinion. Of course he is, but you've never been entitled to your own facts. And if there is this consistent defense of what the president-elect says when we know it is demonstrably false, that's a problem. And that's why politicians frustratingly dance, because they often don't want to get caught saying something that's just completely untrue.
Look at Paul Ryan's approach yesterday when asked about it. He says, who cares?
About the voting fraud. He was asked,
who cares
on
if
60
that's
Minutes,
not true.
Well, he got to that point
think
last.
That there's voting fraud and millions of people, and he said, you know what, I don't know.
Myself. I said, I don't know. I can't speak to it. I don't have any reason to believe it, but I don't really care.
Don't really care if millions of people perpetrated voter fraud.
Going back to the
I don't really care what Trump says on that level.
Why? How can you not care?
What was that gesture, Allison, that you made last week with that focus group? What was the head? What was that thing?
Face palm.
I feel like I'm going to start to get a dent in my forehead from all the times I'm going to be doing
that. But there's a danger as well. Not in what you did. That was a great piece, by the way. I watched it at home. But there is a danger in dismissing the motivation for wanting to believe that what you're being told is untrue. And we have Fareed on later today. He wrote a beautiful piece about the roots of populism. Somebody in this country believes that they have been forgotten. And there are millions and millions of that somebody. And this plays into that. And I think it raises the bar of saying, look, I know you've been told this. This is what's true. This is what's true. And you just keep going with that. It's when you don't hold truth to power, when we get fatigued by Trump putting out a lot of this stuff, that you get in trouble.
So what's the answer? I know we haven't come up with it yet.
Stay the course. Fight the good fight.
Challenge.
That's the answer. You can't let If they're not going to repudiate it and say the media has to do it, they have to constantly puncture this. Otherwise, there's media that does support it.
Well, here's an example, by the way. Pizzagate is a particularly over-the-top conspiracy theory involving a child sex predator ring. I purposely kind of didn't read about it in October, November. Purposely didn't educate myself. Didn't want to know because it seemed so ludicrous. I didn't need to know what it was.
No, you got to get into it.
Turned out maybe I did.
Yeah, you got to get into all of them.
Maybe real news outlets have to be more forceful in puncturing this stuff early on. I don't know if it would make a difference in a case like this, but it may be necessary to try.
In case you missed